Thank you, Brendan. Good morning, friends. It's actually a real pleasure to be able to sit here and join this kickoff of iCalifornia, and to hear Secretary Ramos, to hear you, Rob. It was terrific. And, we're looking at all of you who are actually the pioneers. You've been doing this a long time. And I can't help but reflect on who is in this room, being off script from what Brenda told me to do, but trying to sort of reflect on where we've come. And when I sat down, I was looking at our state librarian, Stacy Aldridge, and we were reflecting on this most recent period of effort that actually Brenda has been the driving force behind. It's been about 5 years. It feels like, a century to some of us in the trenches, but that is only this latest phase because I see David and Tara and Brent, who's here, and Dr. Bronstein. We've done all this work. You had been the pioneers in getting the issue teed up that we needed to be digitally literate, that we had to do something about broadband. And actually, I was hired by the California Emerging Technology Fund. Let me be clear, I didn't start it. This was the brainchild of the California Public Utilities Commission. It is one of those pillars, as Greg, you said. We're very fortunate we've got on our board Daryl Stewart, who is a part of the Intel family, but Joe Gross is here, who is an original board member of the California Emerging Technology Fund, who hired me. My colleague, Luis Arteaga, who's director of our emerging markets, is also here. I thought I'm really blessed when at 7:15 I see them coming in the door, and I didn't know I was going to have a support team this morning, but it's really good. And the mission that the California Public Utilities Commission gave to the California Emerging Technology Fund is go close the digital divide. Well, okay, that sounds like a very interesting challenge. It needed to be quantified. We did a lot of research. It is evidence-based. We have a strategic plan, and part of that strategic plan says that we need to embrace digital literacy as a matter of public policy in the state, and then we need to infuse it into education and into workforce preparation. And that all leads ultimately to iCalifornia today. I want to say that it is a very comprehensive plan that we're pursuing because no one strategy is going to get the job done of closing the digital divide. And for us, when we started in 2007 operating, we defined it as we need to get deployment, i.e. access to high-speed internet availability, broadband, to 98% of all residences in California. We think, as we've recalibrated and looked at the data, that in 2007, that meant that there was about 94% of all residences had access, that 6% who didn't happened to be about 750,000 households, and they're spread out over 44,000 square miles of inhabited area. That's the size of the state of Kentucky inside California that we're trying to actually get the infrastructure to. Much more challenging, in a sense, and much more of a concern to us is what Secretary Ramos talked about, and that's this digital divide between those who are educated and those that aren't, those who have a higher income and those that aren't, those who speak English and those that don't. And when we did those first baseline studies in California, low-income families, 40,000 a year or more, were at about 33%, and Latino households statewide were at 34%. Now, our goal is to get California overall to 80%, with no one region and no one demographic group below 70% by 2015, to do a lift within a decade that gets us to be globally competitive, on top, once again, when it comes to technology, and having all of our students, our workers, our residents really digitally literate. Our integrated strategy, by the way, includes things such as let's get a very robust telehealth network throughout California because that extends the infrastructure. We have to train a workforce to use that technology. The CEO of the California Telehealth Network is here, Eric Brown. Eric's sitting right next to Brent Smith. Brent is responsible for the Gold Country Regional Consortia. Here in Sacramento, Valley Vision is convening this consortia because we have to play to leaders. We have to play to leadership, to civic organizations in order to be successful. When we started this whole effort, the California Emerging Technology Fund went to Brenda Kempster. The letter she put up was actually written to Brenda from the governor. It was to kick off this whole effort of a campaign to get to digital literacy. That led to an executive order. To our knowledge, actually, California is the state that planted that flag with an executive order and said we're going to be digitally literate. Good. So I hope so, because it's now the national policy from the National Broadband Plan. It's just that other states haven't done it. We want the libraries to be the hubs, the modern hubs of digital literacy. So for all the librarians here, I want to assure you that. When Carlos talked about what he can do on his iPhone, but there are so many students, so many neighborhoods, so many low-performing schools that don't have access to this technology, I got to just share my story. She's already cutting me off, but I sign the checks. I pay the bills for her. So what is she going to do? When I was in grammar school, because I'm actually from that kind of disadvantaged community in the San Joaquin Valley, growing up a dairy farm, and my parents really didn't have very much money. The taxpayers and the regents of the state put me, University of California, gave me an education. But when I was in school, and that was many years ago, the library wouldn't check out Brentford's books. And my parents didn't have an encyclopedia set at home. All of my colleagues in the track of education I was in grammar school, their parents did have an encyclopedia at home. And I was finding each year I was getting farther and farther behind in trying to do reports and trying to do the research. And I lived way out in the rural area and had to ride a bus and had to get on that bus as soon as the bell rang. And even if I went to the library as soon as I got to school in the morning and spent my entire lunch hour there, I still couldn't get all the work done. So I finally talked the librarian into actually letting me take one volume of the World Book home each night. I suppose if you went to the Livingston Elementary Library today, the only name on that card would be Sunne Wright. And then my parents saved up, and so by the time I went to high school, we actually got an encyclopedia set at home. Well, that experience for me is like what a child has today not having access to a computer or to broadband at home. And that's why we're so focused on getting to every school, getting to every library, bringing the technology, and then getting our workers trained. So with iCalifornia and why you're here today, we want it to be the policy of this executive order now to be translated into statewide. Every workforce preparation course has digital literacy. Every workforce investment board who has a mandate to reach those who are unemployed and underemployed actually integrates digital literacy into their work. 90% of all of the jobs require some digital literacy, not just those in ICT. We know from the Stride Center, we developed EmpowerNet, a toolkit for every workforce investment board, that the very hard to employ can be trained in this industry, and there is a career path. And within 3 years, there's advancement of someone who actually gets trained. 56% will see an increase in their compensation. This is also what Intel and every other employer in California needs, is actually a trained workforce. What we learned from the work that Brenda did with her consulting firm and now with Link America's Foundation is that we can look at what's been done worldwide. We've got the global framework for ICT digital literacy, how to train. We need your help for employers to say, this is the standards that we want. We need all the workforce investment boards, with the support of librarians and educators and everybody else, to say, here's the certification that we accept, so that we can advertise California as being the place where anybody who wants to have access to a trained workforce can come. We hope, Bill, the work that you've done, that everybody else has done to look at the curriculum that could be in our schools actually gets embraced, because what we talk about, in a sense, is so modest compared to where we need to be. But believe me, I stay in here, and you know we don't give up. You were there when we went to the California Workforce Investment Board. We have a program that Superintendent Torgerson has actually endorsed that focuses on low-performing schools in low-income neighborhoods. It's actually not a secret what we need to do, where we need to go in order to have California be competitive and not have any child left behind. The DMV worked because we actually first provided leadership. Secondly, I respected them. 7,800 public employees who took those wait lines from an hour down to 21 minutes in less than a year. And we did it in part because we moved everything that we possibly could online. You know, we said, get out of line, get online. And by the way, the growth in the demand for online services from the DMV in English and in Spanish continues to grow when it's made available. So that's why we're here today. We want your help in this campaign. Thank you, Rob, for framing it so well, because it needs to be now infused in everything that we do. And do not expect anything less from your representatives and from your tax dollars than California becomes #1 in digital literacy. Thank you.